Hello, Chondo. I'm Bingus. If you've kept up with my channel, you'll know that I'm on a bit of a retro Minecraft kick, which is possibly best shown in my video covering the game's golden age. Here, I explored Minecraft's older versions and how the community surrounding them has grown. And in doing this, I name-dropped a very interesting project, one that takes beta Minecraft and thematically thrusts it back into an even earlier version of the game. And by doing this, they're able to completely rethink some of its most foundational mechanics in new and fun ways. So, let's talk about Minecraft ReIndev. ReIndev started out as nothing more than an attempt to add cobwebs, a beta feature, into one of Minecraft's earliest versions, Indev 2010-01-28. With time, the project evolved, adding in more and more, until a point was hit where switching to a later build of the game just made more sense, to utilize some of the systems that wouldn't have been available. But even with the switch to beta 1.7.3, the spirit of the mod did not change. Efforts are made to keep the game similar to the formerly used Indev version, while also adding in new blocks, items, mobs, and more. And according to the official Discord, ReIndev keeps a few things in mind: the fun, fear, and discovery from old Minecraft. ReIndev is a total conversion mod, which means that it basically aims to take the base game that it's modifying and turn it into something new. And specifically with ReIndev, they're not shying away from being completely different. Launching the game and seeing the title screen makes that pretty clear. Not only visually with a new UI, logo, and spinnable skin preview, but also audibly, as you're hit with the menu theme Float from the Aether mod. I think this track really gets you ready for the tone that ReIndev sets. It feels airy, quirky, and most of all, different. Even the smallest things, like the dirt background when loading, have been changed in some way. Getting into a world, we see the neon grass that used to cover Minecraft's surface. And we see some flowers that, while new here, may be familiar. The cyan rose makes its return after being left behind in the early builds of Pocket Edition. This may be insignificant, and I very well might be looking into it too much, but I think this is a good intro to the nature of some of ReIndev's additions. The cyan rose's inclusion was always a bit weird. Other than the nether reactor, which was added to circumvent the limitations of a mobile device, Pocket Edition didn't really have any exclusive features. But it did have a completely unique flower type. It was just a neat little change from what's expected, and a lot of people have pretty fond memories of it. And while ReIndev does have its major additions, I don't want to let all of its neat little changes go unnoticed. Like the hotbar, with a new texture for both the hearts and item slots, or the particles from breaking leaves, or the score counter that serves as positive reinforcement for doing anything, even just breaking and placing blocks. Or how when you eat a slice of watermelon, your character spits the seeds out. Or even how hovering over an item might put a colorful little gradient behind its name. It's the tiny things that are subtle on their own, but really stand out to someone who's played Minecraft for years. Noticing them tells the player that an immense amount of care has been poured into every aspect of this mod, big and small. Which leads me to something else that veteran players are likely to notice pretty quickly: the music. I mentioned that the menu sported a new song, but it doesn't stop there. Pieces of the classic Minecraft soundtracks make up most of what you'll hear throughout gameplay. But every now and then, there'll be something different. Whether it's other familiar tracks from that original soundtrack that just didn't make it into the game, or even Nocturne by Chopin, it makes the player take a second every now and then just to listen. These tracks fit really well in my opinion, especially those by C418. Since they never went officially used, but had a really strong chance to, it really adds to the feeling that this is the Minecraft we know, following a different path. So let's quickly compare some of the features shared between that official game and ReIndev. We have a fully fleshed out creative mode that even features a sprinting mechanic not seen in survival, and also some commands. There's potions, made using a new mechanic involving the cauldron, and new fish, which also provide effects of their own. There's also a good bit of overlap in specific blocks, like basalt, crimson wood, magma blocks, and more. And of course, ReIndev would not be complete without foxes. But most of these shared features still make an effort to be executed differently. The aforementioned basalt isn't exclusive to the nether, Instead, it takes the place of Deep Slate in the overworld. And speaking of the Nether, it's totally reimagined. It resembles the Hell world type seen in some Minecraft Indev versions. There's no ceiling, which leads to a much more open and less claustrophobic setting. And with backported blazes, the Nether feels much more like a dangerous mirror to the overworld. But our most ambitious step away from an official feature might just be redstone. Because there is none. To learn more about the replacement, we need to go back to Indev version 2010-0128, which is the exact version that ReIndev started out by modifying. This came out several months before redstone would be officially added into the game, but its first prototype can be seen here, in the form of gears. They didn't really do much yet, but with hindsight, the intent is pretty clear. ReIndev implements them fully, along with motor blocks, relays, NOT gates, and more. The developers say to think of it as vertical redstone. This is part of why I think it was so important for this mod to base its additions off of Indev. Even though we're technically in beta 1.7.3, this mindset gives ReIndev justification to rethink some pretty fleshed out mechanics. They're not afraid to undo massive features like redstone because, spiritually, we're still in a build of the game that never had it. So we've covered some specific additions and changes, but I want to go back to ReIndev's mission statement, bringing back the fun, fear, and discovery from old Minecraft. So let's cover each of those aspects, starting with discovery. Discovery is a huge part of someone's experience with Minecraft, especially throughout those first few playthroughs of the game. For someone unfamiliar with these worlds, this aspect really gets a chance to shine. Now, I'd be remiss to generalize everyone's opinions on discovery in Minecraft and how they've changed over time. So I think it's important to consider a few factors. 1. The game's terrain has changed. Some people prefer the more jagged and at times unpredictable generation of older versions, and some prefer the more realistic worlds of the modern game. 2. Structure generation used to be solely limited to dungeons. Again, some prefer this as it makes their world feel untouched, and therefore more personalized to them specifically. And some like the more lively worlds with large structure variety. And 3. The circumstances surrounding this matter. Veteran players first discovered Minecraft's worlds while they were still early in development. The worlds of newer players are much fuller because more stuff has been added. All of that to say, discovery can be very subjective, as can fear and fun. With that in mind, I think ReIndev manages to cater towards a large audience on this first aspect. The terrain here is, fittingly, more akin to that seen in the Indev versions of the game, but it features more variety in height and biomes. And while it features a couple more structures, they're all found beneath the surface, leaving it mostly untouched. So I think it finds a nice middle ground for many groups of players. And that's even without mentioning that in the sky of every world, you'll find something pretty interesting. Let's move on to fear. Being frightened might not be something that many people experience while playing Minecraft. Other than the cave noises and maybe the warden, the game doesn't seem to make many efforts to outright scare you. So this plays off of discovery just a bit, but early Minecraft worlds can be kind of eerie, especially if you don't know what to expect. This is the scenario that many veteran players found themselves in. Hardware at the time was on average less capable, so in order to eke out a few more frames per second, you had to deal with the fog. Entities and blocks would find themselves obscured by the fog. Some could even appear malicious or threatening on account of the fog. And I think that newly introduced vagueness impacted one's perception of their own world. It could have been difficult to orient yourself when you can't really see what's around you. If you mix this with the more surreal world generation of the time, it gives you a pretty unique and, at times, unnerving atmosphere. But I haven't mentioned anything exclusive that the mod offers. You can get the fog and at least similar terrain in the regular retro versions. So allow me to show you what a night in ReIndev may look like. You come up from a long mining trip, and you start putting away the haul. While doing this, you hear something that you've never heard before. even though you've survived dozens of nights here already, this is new. You take a cautious step outside, only to see what look like footsteps around your base. You take a second to look around, only to be met with this. ReIndev does not shy away from scaring the player, or at least trying to, but it also doesn't make a habit of it. That event is not an everyday occurrence. Let's get on to the last of our 3 old Minecraft aspects. This is the one that, throughout my playtime, I found the most important. Fun. I've done a lot of research in and around the Golden Age community for most of my videos, and recently, I've seen one comment pop up a couple of times. Some people think that Minecraft, roughly following Indev, gradually became more realistic. I thought it was kind of odd at first, but I went ahead and thought about it some more. We'd see more outlandish features get removed with time, like the neon grass, or diverse world types like floating islands, and even some admittedly out-of-place features like the smooth mobs. Honestly, I think this is where Minecraft always planned to go, to have a more grounded aesthetic and gameplay, and I think these were just its growing pains. Most games go through massive tone shifts throughout early development. However, Minecraft is unique in the fact that these earliest versions had a public following, and a lot of people grew attached to them. They offered a much more cartoony and, for lack of a better term, unserious approach to their appearance and gameplay. The world is colorful and less concerned with consistency. Features didn't have to go through intense playtesting and quality assurance. They were added solely because the guy adding stuff felt like it. It was all part of the process of just figuring things out. To some, this less serious and more experimental game was just more fun. ReIndev feels like it recaptures the best parts of that time and puts in the extra work to polish them. You can see that in the world. The vibrant aesthetic is retained and developed further upon, making sure everything fits in. Compared to the official early versions that were just using temporary programmer art, this art style feels intentional and thought out. Moving on to the features, I've already mentioned the score counter. In official Minecraft, the score counter is, at least to most, likely pretty forgettable, but tying it to every in-game action and letting you know your score is increased makes it feel like an arcade game. Sure, dying means losing your inventory, but it also means losing this massive number you've spent so much time building up. It might be an admittedly arbitrary number, but it does incentivize the player to survive. And throughout this video, I've yet to mention some of the most fun features, like sticky torches, which can be thrown to light up areas far away, and there's even a 3D animation for tossing them, or sticks of dynamite, which can be launched to deal block and entity damage from a distance. And while we're on the topic of throwables, what about a pot of fire? There's even more utilities in the form of tools, as now there's a couple more equipment tiers that exist solely to save you time, like the molten tools, which automatically smelt anything you mine, making glass and coal convenient to collect, or obsidian tools that have super high durability. And existing tiers have been given some upgrades. Stone tools have a slight fortune effect for some blocks, which in my experience made early tree farming much smoother. Gold tools essentially have silk touch, and diamond tools become faster as their durability decreases. And we have a pretty large block variety to use these tools on, including coral, new bricks, tables, chairs, fences, bookshelves, lily pads, colorful wool, glass, planks, chests, and even crates, which serve as a sort of shulker box, albeit with a smaller inventory. And I wasn't sure where to fit this next one in, so balls. All of this together just makes for a very fun experience. When recording footage for this, I'd end up just flying around and throwing a bunch of stuff all over the place. I'm sure a lot of people did this, but when I was younger, I would fly around in creative and just blow stuff up. This is kind of the same thing, only there's much more variety in what I get to mess around with. And it's nice to revisit that feeling of doing nonsensical stuff just because it's enjoyable. At least in creative, it really makes a game feel like a true sandbox, like it's just one missing texture away from being Gmod. That's barely scratching the surface of ReIndev's additions and how they factor into your gameplay. Of course, I suggest playing it on your own and having your own experiences with it. I'm positive that you'll find stuff that I didn't even mention here, just because there's so much on offer. Every addition, even the most subtle, have clearly been handled with an immense amount of care. And within those changes, it's not afraid at all to be ambitious and different. By adding in physics items and a paradise in the sky, it consistently does things that you just wouldn't expect. And it adds in some of the best parts of later updates, whether they be specific blocks or huge under-the-hood mechanics like the cubic chunk system. By immersing itself in the world of early experimental Minecraft, it's able to go in a completely different direction and create something totally new out of something old. And along the way, it's cultivated an identity totally unique from anything we've ever seen before. If you liked this video, please consider liking the video. If you especially liked it, please consider subscribing. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone watching. We just hit 10,000 subscribers. I'm trying to send a heartfelt message, but it just started raining, which will undoubtedly show up in the audio recording. Okay, so I'm doing it like this, because the window's over there, and that's where you can hear the rain. So, and this is picking up right here. So, thank you to everyone watching. You being here means an amount to me that I cannot really put into words. My journey with YouTube just really started in January, and it's August now. So a little over half the way into the year, and we're already here, which is crazy. It's been such a crazy fast growth that in most of my videos, the outro has included some sort of thank you for hitting a milestone. So to really be here right now is kind of flooring. So just a huge thank you. And to wrap up talking about me, a huge thank you to the team behind ReIndev. It's an incredible project that offers a ton that nothing else is. So keep up the great work, and I am 100% looking forward to new updates. And of course, thank you for watching.